January 29, 1991. Staff Sergeant Mike Harris is flying in an MC-130 cargo plane over Iraqi positions in southern Iraq. His mission isn't to drop bombs, it's to drop paper. 20 million leaflets to be exact, each one printed in Arabic with a simple message. This is your first and last warning. Tomorrow we will bomb this area. Get out now to save yourself. Over the next 6 weeks, he and other psychological operations teams will drop 29 million leaflets over Iraqi forces. And those leaflets will convince tens of thousands of Iraqi soldiers to surrender without firing a shot. Welcome back to Gulf War Chronicles. Today we're talking about the war you didn't see, the psychological operations campaign that was just as important as bombs and tanks. While everyone focused on the air campaign and ground war, PSYOP's teams were waging a battle for Iraqi soldiers' minds. They used leaflets, radio broadcasts, loudspeakers, and deception to demoralize Iraqi forces, encourage surrenders, and save coalition lives. And it worked better than anyone expected. This is the story of how paper and words became weapons. The PSYOP's campaign started before the shooting did. In late 1990, even before the air campaign began, coalition forces were planning how to break Iraqi morale. The strategy was simple but effective. Convince Iraqi soldiers that resistance was futile, that they were fighting for a lost cause, that surrendering was safe and honorable. Make them more afraid of staying than of surrendering. Give them a way out. The 4th Psychological Operations Group from Fort Bragg took the lead. These were specialists in mass communication, propaganda, and influence operations. They studied Iraqi culture, military doctrine, and psychology. They worked with Arab linguists to ensure messages were culturally appropriate and persuasive. They tested different designs and messages to see what would be most effective. This wasn't random, it was science. The leaflets themselves were carefully designed. Some showed Iraqi soldiers with their families asking, "Do you want to see them again?" Others showed coalition military power, B-52 bombers, M1 tanks with messages like, "This is what you're facing." Still others gave specific instructions on how to surrender safely. "Approach with your hands up. Carry this leaflet. You will be treated well." Every leaflet was designed to create doubt, fear, or hope, whatever emotion would encourage surrender. One of the most effective leaflet designs showed an Iraqi tank in the crosshairs of coalition targeting systems. The message read, "We can see you even in the dark. We can hit you from miles away. You cannot win." For Iraqi tank crews sitting in defensive positions, knowing that coalition thermal imaging could see them at night while they were blind, this was terrifying. Many Iraqi prisoners later said these leaflets convinced them that fighting was suicide. The distribution methods were creative. MC-130 cargo planes would fly over Iraqi positions and release millions of leaflets from cargo pallets. The leaflets would scatter over huge areas, drifting down into trenches and bunkers. Some were delivered by artillery, special shells that would burst at altitude and release leaflets. Others were delivered by F-16 fighters that had been modified with leaflet dispensers. The goal was saturation. Make sure every Iraqi soldier saw these messages repeatedly. Captain Sarah Mitchell was a PSYOPs officer who helped plan leaflet campaigns. She described the process. We'd get intelligence on where Iraqi units were concentrated, then plan drops to saturate those areas. Sometimes we'd drop warning leaflets saying we'd bomb a specific area tomorrow. Then we'd actually bomb it the next day. Iraqi soldiers learned that our leaflets told the truth. If we said we'd bomb, we'd bomb. That credibility made future leaflets more effective. Radio broadcasts were the other major component. The coalition-operated voice of the Gulf radio station, broadcasting in Arabic 24 hours a day. The programming mixed music with news, messages to Iraqi soldiers, and information about how to surrender. Iraqi soldiers would listen on portable radios. The broadcasts told them the truth about the war, that the air campaign was destroying Iraq's military, that coalition forces were overwhelming, that Saddam had lied to them about the war situation. Some broadcasts were personal. PSYOP's teams would interview Iraqi prisoners who'd surrendered, then broadcast those interviews. The prisoners would describe how they'd been treated well, given food and medical care, and would be returned home after the war. Hearing this from fellow Iraqi soldiers was far more convincing than hearing it from Americans. It removed the fear that surrender meant torture or death. The PSYOP's campaign also included deception. Remember the Navy SEAL beach operations we talked about in another video? Part of that was PSYOPs, making Iraq believe a Marine amphibious assault was coming. Fake radio traffic, planted intelligence, demonstrations of amphibious capability, all designed to make Iraq commit forces to defending the wrong locations. Loudspeakers were used during the ground war. Coalition forces would set up massive speakers and broadcast surrender appeals in Arabic toward Iraqi positions. You are surrounded. Your army is defeated. Lay down your weapons and you will not be harmed. This is your chance to survive. Combined with the overwhelming military pressure, these broadcasts convinced entire units to give up. The timing of PSYOP's messages was coordinated with military operations. Before bombing a specific area, leaflets would warn Iraqi troops to leave. This served two purposes. It gave Iraqi soldiers a chance to surrender or flee, reducing casualties, and it created confusion and panic in Iraqi units. Officers would struggle to keep their men in position when they'd been warned they'd be bombed tomorrow. The results were dramatic. When coalition ground forces began their advance, Iraqi soldiers surrendered in massive numbers. Many were holding the leaflets, using them as safe conduct passes exactly as the leaflets had instructed. Others had memorized the surrender procedures from the leaflets. Entire units walked out of their positions with hands up, carrying the leaflets that had convinced them surrender was their best option. Sergeant James Cooper was with the 1st Infantry Division during the ground war. He described encountering Iraqi units that were ready to surrender. We'd approach their positions and they'd already be standing with their hands up, holding these leaflets. They'd point to the leaflet and point to themselves like, "See, we're doing what it says." No shots fired. They'd been convinced by the PSYOP's campaign that surrendering was safe and smart. That saved American lives and Iraqi lives. Post-war surveys of Iraqi prisoners confirmed the effectiveness. Over 80% said they'd seen coalition leaflets. Nearly 60% said the leaflets influenced their decision to surrender. Soldiers described how the leaflets had circulated through their units, passed from soldier to soldier, discussed in trenches. Iraqi officers tried to confiscate them, but there were too many. The psychological impact was exactly what coalition planners had hoped for. The economic calculation was stunning. A single leaflet cost pennies to produce. 29 million leaflets cost less than $1 million total. That psychological operations campaign probably convinced tens of thousands of Iraqis to surrender who might otherwise have fought. How many coalition casualties did that prevent? How many Iraqi deaths did it prevent? The return on investment for PSYOPs was astronomical compared to bombs and bullets. This wasn't new. Psychological warfare has existed as long as war itself. But Desert Storm showed how effective it could be when combined with overwhelming military force. The leaflets worked because they were backed by reality. We told Iraqi soldiers we'd bomb specific areas, then we actually did it. We told them they couldn't win, and the military situation proved us right. We told them they'd be treated well if they surrendered, and prisoners confirmed it was true. Credibility made the PSYOPs effective. The lessons from Desert Storm PSYOPs influenced later conflicts. In Afghanistan and Iraq after 2001 and 2003, psychological operations were integrated into planning from the beginning. Leaflets, radio, text messages, social media, all used to influence enemy forces and civilian populations. The techniques were more sophisticated, but the principles came from Desert Storm. There's a memorial at Fort Bragg, now Fort Liberty, that honors the 4th Psychological Operations Group. Their work in Desert Storm is considered one of the most successful psychological operations campaigns in military history. They helped win the war while minimizing casualties on both sides. That's a success worth celebrating. If you served with PSYOP's units during Desert Storm, or if you saw the leaflets and broadcasts, or if you were one of the Iraqi soldiers who surrendered partly because of them, I'd love to hear your perspective in the comments. This is one of those behind-the-scenes stories that doesn't get enough attention. Thanks for watching Gulf War Chronicles. The leaflet campaign showed that modern warfare isn't just about firepower. It's about information, psychology, and understanding your enemy's mindset. 29 million pieces of paper dropped from aircraft convinced more Iraqis to quit than thousands of bombs could have killed. That's economy of force. That's smart warfare. That's using every tool available to achieve objectives with minimal casualties. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button. We're telling the complete story of Desert Storm, including the psychological warfare that helped win it. I'll see you in the next one.